Distance is not weakness. It is not surrender. It is not giving up. Distance is the quiet revolution of the solar return to the fortress of self-respect that the ancient Stoics understood as the foundation of all inner strength. When you step back from someone who has taken your presence for granted, you are not retreating, you are reclaiming. You are practicing what Marcus Aurelius called the art of not being disturbed by what lies outside your control, while mastering what lies within it. There is a profound paradox in human nature that the Stoics recognized centuries ago. The more desperately we chase something, the more it eludes us. The more we cling, the more we repel. But when we withdraw with dignity, when we create space where there was once suffocating closeness, something remarkable happens. The absence begins to speak louder than presence ever could. Silence becomes more powerful than any words you might have spoken in desperation. This is not manipulation. This is not a game. It's the natural consequence of understanding your own worth and refusing to diminish it for anyone. When you give someone distance, you are not punishing them. You are freeing yourself. And in that freedom, you become something rare in a world full of people who beg for attention, who chase validation, who sacrifice their dignity for scraps of recognition. You become unreachable. You become valuable. Become someone worth returning to. The first reason they return is because absence reveals your true value. Seneca wrote that we never know the worth of water until the well runs dry. When you were always available, always present, always willing to accommodate their needs and desires, you became like air, essential, but invisible. Your constant presence created the illusion of permanence, and with permanence comes the dangerous assumption that you will always be there, no matter how poorly you are treated. But when you withdraw, when you become absent from their daily experience, they begin to feel the void. They notice the empty space where your energy used to be, the texts that no longer come, the calls that are no longer made, the emotional support that is no longer freely given. Suddenly, they are forced to confront what life looks like without you in it, and the realization can be jarring. They begin to understand that your presence was not a given, it was a gift, and gifts once withdrawn are deeply missed. The second reason they return is because you stopped giving them power over your emotional state. The Stoics understood that our emotions are not caused by external events, but by our judgments about those events. Epictetus taught that no one can hurt you without your permission. When you were chasing them, reacting to their moods, desperately trying to win their approval, you were handing them the keys to your inner citadel. You were allowing them to dictate your happiness, your peace, your sense of worth. But distance changes this dynamic entirely. When you step back, you reclaim sovereignty over your own emotional landscape. Stop reacting to their actions or lack thereof. Stop allowing their behavior to determine your mood. This shift is palpable. They can sense that their power over you has diminished, and paradoxically, this makes them want to reclaim it. They return not because they suddenly love you more, but because they have lost the ability to control your emotional responses, and this loss of power is unsettling to them. The third reason they return is because they realized your energy was rare. In a world full of people who give their energy freely, who scatter their attention like seeds in the wind, who make themselves available to anyone who asks, you became different. You became selective. You became precious. When you were they're always willing to engage, always ready to give your time and attention, you appeared common. But rarity creates desire. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that we should not waste our time on worthless things or people. When you embrace this wisdom and withdraw your energy from someone who does not appreciate it, you demonstrate that your time and attention are not infinite resources. You show that you value yourself enough to be selective about where you invest your emotional energy. This selectivity transforms you from something common into something rare. And rarity has always been the foundation of value. The fourth reason they return is because you triggered their ego. The human ego cannot tolerate being dismissed or ignored. When you were chasing them, their ego was well fed. They felt important, desired, valuable. Your pursuit validated their worth in their own eyes. But when you withdraw, when you stop chasing, you become indifferent to their presence or absence. Their ego experiences a wound. This is not about revenge or punishment. It is simply the natural consequence of no longer feeding someone's ego with your attention. The Stoics understood that the ego is a dangerous master, but a useful servant. When you stop serving someone else's ego, they often feel compelled to return to you in an attempt to restore the validation they once received. They come back not out of love or genuine desire, but because their ego demands the restoration of what it perceives as lost admiration. The fifth reason they return is because silence became your greatest message. There is immense power in what is left unsaid. When you were constantly communicating, constantly explaining, constantly trying to bridge the gap between you, your words lost their weight. But silence carries a different kind of message, one that cannot be argued with, dismissed, or ignored. Seneca wrote that every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. When you choose silence over explanation, distance over pursuit, absence over presence, you are ending one chapter of the relationship and potentially beginning another. Your silence speaks volumes about your self-respect, your boundaries, your unwillingness to tolerate being taken for granted. This silence often accomplishes what hours of conversation could not. It makes them think, wonder, and ultimately return. The sixth reason they return is because you disrupted the validation loop. Many relationships, particularly those that become toxic or one-sided, operate on a cycle of validation. They give you just enough attention to keep you engaged, and you give them consistent validation in return. This loop can continue indefinitely, with you always giving more than you receive, always hoping for more, always settling for less. But when you step back, you break this cycle. You refuse to play the game, stop providing the validation they have come to expect, and you stop seeking the validation they were sparingly providing. This disruption forces them to confront the reality of what the relationship had become. One-way street where they took far more than they gave. Often, they return because they want to restore the validation loop. But sometimes, they return because they finally understand what a genuine exchange looks like. The seventh reason they return is because your calmness made them curious. In a world full of emotional reactivity, where people explode in anger, collapse in despair, or plead desperately for attention, your calm becomes magnetic. When you withdraw with dignity, when you accept their absence without drama, when you continue living your life with purpose and peace, you become intriguing. The Stoics practiced emotional equilibrium, not as a means of control, but as a path to freedom. Aurelius wrote that very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself and your way of thinking. When you embody this wisdom, when you remain calm and centered, regardless of external circumstances, you demonstrate a strength that is rare and attractive. Your calmness becomes a mystery they want to solve, a peace they want to understand, a strength they want to be near. The eighth reason they return is because they underestimated your detachment. When you were emotionally invested, when you were chasing and pleading and hoping, they assumed you would always be there. They believed they could take you for granted because you had shown them that you were willing to accept whatever crumbs of attention they offered. They underestimated your capacity for detachment, but true detachment, as the Stoics understood it, is not coldness or indifference. It is freedom. It is the ability to care without being controlled by that care. It is the capacity to love without being destroyed by the absence of love in return. When you demonstrate this level of detachment, when you show that you can be perfectly content without them, they are forced to reconsider their assumptions about your emotional dependence on them. The ninth and final reason they return is because you shifted from chasing to choosing. The Stoics believe that we always have a choice in how we respond to life's circumstances. When you were chasing them, you were operating from a place of scarcity, believing that you needed their approval, their attention, their presence to be complete. But when you step back, you move into a place of abundance, understanding that you are complete within yourself and that their presence in your life is a choice, not a necessity. This shift is transformative. You stop being someone who chases and become someone who chooses. Stop being someone who begs and become someone who offers. Stop being someone who depends and become someone who decides. This transformation is visible in everything you do: your posture, your words, your energy. You become someone who is clearly choosing to be in the relationship rather than someone who desperately needs to be in it. And this choice makes you infinitely more attractive. Epictetus taught that we are not disturbed by events, but by our judgments about events. You change your judgment about your own worth. You stop seeing yourself as someone who needs to chase and start seeing yourself as someone who deserves to be chosen. Everything changes. Your energy changes. Your presence changes. Your absence changes. You become someone worth returning to, not because you made yourself available, because you made yourself valuable. The ancient Stoics understood that true power comes not from controlling others, but from controlling yourself. When you give someone distance, you are not trying to control their behavior, you are controlling your own. You're refusing to participate in dynamics that diminish your worth. You are choosing to invest your energy in yourself rather than in someone who has not earned it. This choice, this discipline, this commitment to your own dignity is what makes you magnetic. Distance is not a punishment, it is a gift. It is a gift you give to yourself, freeing you from the exhausting cycle of pursuit and rejection. It is a gift you give to them, allowing them to experience life without your constant presence, and perhaps for the first time, to truly appreciate what they had. It is a gift you give to the relationship itself, creating space for something new, to grow something based on mutual respect rather than desperate need. When you walk away with dignity, the world takes notice. And often those who once took you for granted return not because you begged, but because you became something they could no longer access. You became a person who valued themselves enough to walk away from what did not serve them. Became someone who understood that presence is earned, not given freely. You became someone who chose themselves over the comfortable familiarity of being undervalued. This is the way of the Stoic: not to be moved by external validation, but to be anchored in internal worth. Not to chase what flees, but to become what returns. Not to beg for love, but to embody the kind of strength that makes love want to find its way back to you. In your absence, you become present. In your silence, you speak volumes. In your distance, you draw them close. This is not paradox, this is truth. This is the power of knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less than you deserve.